Okay. Okay, Mary still has another one comment.
And it just.
Okay, we have an interesting range. Are there some here that, would this represent the most typical things that you use? How often might you be using some of these? What kind of happens, Mary?
I actually feel like throughout the whole lesson, it's a formative experience.
Right.
Because as you're teaching, if you know that what you have in mind isn't where we're going because you realize they lack the background knowledge or whatever, then you formed an assessment and you're listening throughout your whole lesson to see where things are going.
Right. Right, so you're saying this is the moment you begin with,
From the
however you
minute they-
start,
right.
you're picking up
But
that
these are
information.
like more traditional tasks that you can use, or activities you
Right.
can use to,
Right.
like if you needed to document.
Right. It's interesting that you're calling these traditional tests as well, that word, because right now I think in the literature, the folks that are researching, no, it's not that. The researchers, I think, would say these aren't used as often as they should be, and maybe we aren't at traditional, but for you, if they're just a very common, natural thing to have in a lesson, and you've been doing this for several years, it's very expected that you might use that word traditional, because for you this is. Are there some that you like better than others, or you feel that these are, give you what you want? Because as Mary said, you're kind of feeling out your students and trying to figure out whether they're getting what you're trying to teach.
I would like to do more with my students, doing more activities. I feel like I do most of the assessing and they're not doing enough.
Okay.
And I'd like to get them up to the board so I can hear what they're talking about.
Right.
Because I think the danger if you've been teaching a while is you generally know where the mistakes are going to be.
Right.
But they surprise you every now and then.
Yes, they do.
So,
Yes, they do.
so anyway, I mean, I know I tend to do too much on my own, and I've been trying to do more. I like, some of the younger teachers have given me things that were more student engaged.
Right. And we are going to spend some time on that. So that's part of our focus this morning, is to look at more student involvement, because I wish I could remember now who to attribute this to, but they say you shouldn't work harder than your students. Right? So no, I mean,
that's brilliant.
When you really shouldn't. When you're teaching, the kids should be working harder. You should be, how do you make more of that? I mean, hands down, there has to be planning underneath all this, so there is the hard work of planning. But that facilitating, how could you become more the facilitator than, say, the director or the knowledge provider? And how do you blend when that's important, when you need to do the other, and get the kids more involved? And we're going to be talking about some of those structures as well. Jim?
Could you really quickly just read them all?
Sure.
I can't see them all.
No, I will. Right there, put my glasses on. We had before the lesson warm up and rapid fire, and this is 6 questions, Mary, that you asked for rapid fire.
And there's 6 very quick questions. They're on a smart board, so, and they're covered up like with the nameplate, so you hit it, and they need to be 6. These are not complex questions. These are just very, do you have the background information you know?
So these are mostly, say, knowledge and recognition.
For example, we're working with quadratics. What is the name of the shape you should see on the graph with the quadratic? So what do you call the lowest point? What do you, things like that.
Okay.
Just see, it has to be very, just knowledge, just.
Sure.
But it's nice for before to assess where they're at. Because if they have no idea, you find out quickly.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. We have moving into the beginning of the lesson, so questions on the previous night's homework quizzes, problems to activate prior knowledge. So these all sort of have an interesting similarity and flavor. I don't know if anyone wants to speak to a particular one that they put up, or would we say that these are more typical, using Mary's word now, traditional kinds of things that we might do at the beginning, the way we might launch our lessons. Okay. This one is sort of throughout the lesson, which is listening for key ideas as they explore an idea. So that sense of observation and listening as well.
As we're moving towards tasks, you'll find that you have a basic idea of what you want to be hearing as you're watching. As the kids are doing the work and you're walking around to assist them, you want to be, there's certain things you want to be listening for.
Sure, absolutely, and hopefully I'll be showing you a bit of an example of something that gets at part of this this morning as well. In terms of during, again, as we move during the lesson, so we have sample tests with answers, leveled examples, easier to harder, so simple to complex, observations, questions while students are working, lessons with group work with answers, asking pointed questions, checking students' work, whiteboard questions, thumbs up, thumbs down, using the whiteboard. All right, so these are some others. Did anyone want to speak to any of these and some of the things you think work well for these and why you value getting information this way?
I like having answers for the kids to check. I think they're more motivated by that. They can see if they're getting it wrong, and they can help each other out. And one of the activities one of our teachers gave me was this odd man out, where they're working in a group of 4, and they all have 4 different problems, but one of them's got a different answer, so they have to work together.
Right.
So I really like those kind of activities. The kids are really motivated with that.
Sure.
And I'm not working so hard.
No, and as I said, the
Yes.
kids should be working harder than you. End of the lesson, we had beat the teach, advanced problems. You said it can limit homework, or you limit homework?
Right, it could, if they can beat the it's one, so you've taught your lesson, so you would consider this like the ultimate question for that lesson. If they can beat the teach and answer it, and you don't say you're not doing your homework, you could say if you beat the teach, you have 3 lessons, you can pick any 3 that you don't want to do, or whatever you want to motivate them with.
And then we have take it out the door, which I think is excellent, unless you use it in an interesting different way, Joe, or take it out the door.
I didn't catch your first thing.
I didn't know if you, I'm assuming people understood take it out the door, unless I was asking if you added any extra new twist.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Nothing special there.
Okay, all right. Well, we're gonna move in and hopefully, get a sense of all these. In a moment, I'm gonna have to move some of the things down, but we'll see how far we have to go here. Not too bad, just a few.
Oh.
A few just have to come. Whoop. They're gonna come down on their own. Just.
Becky, are we gonna get a copy of this?
Yes, you are.
I'm sorry?
I wasn't ready.
Oh.
Yes, I'm
No,
gonna
her
give you a
pages are
copy
not
of this,
in there, yeah.
on paper, and then if you want at me at some point to put this up electronically, you're welcome to it as well. I wasn't gonna give you the handout just yet,
That's fine. I just,
but you will get it.
I don't want to visibly type it.
No, you're right. No, I understand, no, I understand it, and I can appreciate that as well. One of the things I ran into that I thought was particularly satisfying for me, because there's some interesting things in formative assessment, because some of the language they use about assessment is that summative is formal, but formative is informal. And I really struggle with that, because that word, I can understand it from the research side of things, but from the practical everyday, I go, well, it sort of sounds like it's casual, and I might do it, I might not, and it won't hurt. And that's not what the research literature is saying. The research literature is saying, hey, teachers, snap out of it. We should be doing so much more with formative assessment. And when I ran across this concept of knowledge information, I went, oh, wow, that makes sense for me. Students who are learning are forming their understanding, and formative assessment might help me with that. So kind of think about that phrase, knowledge information, as we kind of go along and do some things. As you know, some of our struggle with our students is, do they even understand the question, right? Because we asked a question, they gave us an answer. Unfortunately, the answer wasn't quite what we wanted, so that's a problem we have in our classrooms. Or they focus on the wrong
I like that a lot.
Or they focus on the wrong thing, right? Instead of thinking about the math, they're looking at the reality, like who would ever buy that many cantaloupe? Okay. So again, that idea, so we have that as a problem. And then we have this other one that's a little more hidden. And this is just a set of students' misconceptions. And maybe you've run into these as you've worked with students in the past. Okay, so maybe you've encountered a few students who've held these particular misconceptions. And actually, when I was reading through some of these anyway to find some, I went, I think I was guilty myself as a student with some of this, and kind of thinking about what is it that we tune into and that we do. So it leads me to ask a question. So what I'd like you to do is take a moment. I know you've got the sticky notes. This time we'll just use it to just write down some ideas. Would you just take a moment and just write down what you think this means to you at this point in time? What's formative assessment?